Every single time you send an email, buy something online, or just browse the web, you are relying on this incredible, invisible architecture of trust. And the science that builds that entire structure, that's cryptology. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the master blueprint that keeps our entire digital world from falling apart.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with a quick look at the history, then we'll lay down the fundamental rules of the game. After that, we'll open up the toolkit and see the actual components. Then we'll see how they all fit together, how people try to break them, and finally, why this is a race that literally never ends.
To really get a grip on our modern blueprints, we've got to start at the very beginning. The need to keep secrets is, well, just about as old as writing itself, and the way we've done it has completely shaped history.
And it's a pretty wild journey. It all started with really simple stuff back in ancient Rome, like the Caesar Cipher, where you literally just shift the letters of the alphabet over a few spots. This evolved into these incredibly complex mechanical beasts like the Enigma machine in World War II. The one famously cracked by Alan Turing and his team. That breakthrough was a huge deal, and it really helped pave the way for modern computers. And that, of course, brings us to today, where unbelievably complex math running on tiny microchips secures the entire global internet.
Okay, so before we can start building anything, right, we need to lay a rock-solid foundation. These are the core, non-negotiable principles that every single secure crypto system has to follow.
Now, here's an idea from way back in the 19th century that is just absolutely crucial. It's called Kerckhoffs' principle, and what it says is this. You have to assume your enemy knows exactly how your system works, the algorithm, the machine, all of it. The only thing that should be secret is the key. Now, that might sound totally backwards, but it means the system can be publicly tested, attacked, and proven to be strong by thousands of experts around the world. Building right on top of that, Shannon, basically the father of information theory, he added another critical rule. Your encrypted message, the ciphertext, it has to look like complete and utter gibberish, total random noise. Because if there are any patterns left, like some letters showing up more than others, an attacker can use that statistical data to start cracking your code.
So all these principles are working toward these 4 big goals. These are the pillars of our whole structure. First, confidentiality, making sure only the right people can read the message. Second, integrity, proving the message hasn't been messed with. Third, authentication, knowing for sure who sent it. And finally, non-repudiation, making it impossible for the sender to turn around later and say, nope, wasn't me.
All right, our foundation is set. Now it's time to open up the toolkit. These are the main parts, the nuts and bolts, the cogs and gears that we're going to use to build our engine of trust.
First up, we've got symmetric encryption. The easiest way to think about this is like a simple padlock and key. You use the exact same key to lock the box and to unlock it. This method is super fast and really efficient, which is why we use it for encrypting huge chunks of data. The gold standard today is called AES, a system so tough it's used by the US government for top secret files. But there's one massive problem. How do you get that single key safely to the other person in the first place? And how you use that symmetric key is just as important as the key itself. This is a perfect example. On the left, you've got a really basic method called ECB. It encrypts identical pieces of the original picture into identical encrypted pieces. So while you can't see the fine details, you can still totally make out the shape of the penguin. That's a huge information leak. Now look at the right. A secure method like CBC links all the blocks together, so the result looks like complete random static, just like Shannon said it should. So to solve that key sharing problem, we need a totally different tool. This is asymmetric encryption. The idea here is brilliant. You use a pair of keys that are mathematically tied together. You have a public key, which you can shout from the rooftops and give to absolutely everyone. It can only lock the box. And then you have a private key, which you guard with your life. It's the only key in the world that can unlock the box. So the big takeaway here is that it's not about which one is better. They're just built for different jobs. Symmetric is the racehorse. It's fast and amazing for encrypting the actual data, but key management is a headache. Asymmetric is the workhorse. It's way slower and takes a lot of computing power, but it solves that key exchange problem beautifully. The real magic, as you'll see, is when we make them work together. Okay, our last tool in the box is the hash function. Now, this isn't encryption. It's a one-way street. You can put any data in, a file, a password, the entire Library of Congress, and it spits out a unique, fixed-length string of text. It's like a digital fingerprint. And if you change just one tiny thing in the input, even a single letter, the avalanche effect kicks in, and boom,
the output fingerprint changes completely and unpredictably. This is perfect for checking if a file is exactly as it was when it was sent.
All right, we've got our principles, we've got our parts. Now the fun begins. Let's start putting this thing together into a machine that actually provides security out there in the real world.
So check this out. This is our first real creation, the digital signature. Here's how it works. You take a document and run it through a hash function to get its unique fingerprint. Then you encrypt that fingerprint with your private key. Now, anyone with your public key can unlock the fingerprint. If the fingerprint they unlock matches a new one they make from the document, they know two things for sure. One, the document hasn't been changed, and two, only you could have signed it. And just like that, bam, we get integrity, authentication, and non-repudiation all in one shot.
But wait a second. How do you really know that a public key belongs to, say, your bank and not some scammer? That's a huge problem, right? We solve it with this massive ecosystem of trust called a public key infrastructure, or PKI. At the very top, you have these trusted companies called certificate authorities. They're like the digital world's passport office. They issue certificates that officially bind an identity to a public key, so you know who you're really talking to.
And here it is, the whole machine fully assembled and working. This is what happens in the blink of an eye every time you see that little padlock icon in your web browser. First, your browser uses the PKI to verify the website's certificate. Then it uses the website's public key, our slow asymmetric encryption, for one very specific job, to securely create and share a brand new one-time use symmetric key. From that moment on, all the data flying back and forth is locked down with that super fast symmetric key, with hashes making sure nothing gets corrupted along the way. It's all our tools working together in perfect harmony. Of course, anytime you build a bigger, stronger vault, someone out there is going to try to crack it. A blueprint is pretty useless if it can't handle a little stress, so we have to understand how these systems can actually fail. Attackers or cryptoanalysts, they basically have two main playbooks. First, they can attack the math itself, looking for some kind of subtle structural weakness in the algorithm. Or they can just forget the math and go straight for the key. That could mean a brute force attack, where they literally try every single possible key, or using dictionary attacks with massive lists of common passwords. But some of the really clever attacks don't even bother with the math at all. A side-channel attack might listen to the tiny sounds or measure the power a computer chip is using as it works. They're looking for tiny variations that could leak information about the secret key. It's wild. And then there's the classic man-in-the-middle attack, where a hacker secretly wedges themselves between you and who you think you're talking to, intercepting everything while you're none the wiser. And all of this constant battle between the builders and the breakers, it leads us to the single most important idea in this entire blueprint. Security is not a thing you achieve, it's a process. Cryptology is a living, breathing thing. It's an endless cycle, a kind of arms race. Cryptographers design a system, attackers find a way to break it. That break exposes a vulnerability, which forces the designers back to the drawing board to build something even stronger. Old systems that we once thought were unbreakable, like DES and SHA-1, were eventually defeated by smarter attacks and faster computers. That's what led us to the AES and SHA-3 we use today. This cycle, it just never, ever stops. And that leaves us looking toward the horizon, right? With massive threats like quantum computers on their way, machines that could potentially shatter many of our current systems, that cryptologic cycle is spinning faster than ever before. The race to design the next unbreakable architecture of trust is already on.